He forgot how to cry. He forgot how to smile. Not because he wanted to, but because one night his own father made sure of it. This is the story of a boy who lost every emotion he ever had, and the one girl who was crazy enough to go looking for them. Stay until the end. Before we start, if you've ever felt invisible in your own home, this story is for you. Now, let's begin. Our story begins in a quiet house that never felt like home. One day, a guest arrived, and with him came his children, loud, playful, alive in a way this house had never allowed. They pulled the boy into their games without asking, and for the first time in his life, he felt something warm spread through his chest. He didn't even know what it was called. He just knew he didn't want it to end. But his father saw that smile, and his father hated it. In front of everyone, the man tore into his son, insult after insult, word after word, until the warmth in the boy's chest turned to ice. The boy felt it immediately, that heavy, suffocating feeling of being watched, judged, never good enough. So he did the only thing he knew how to do. He ran. Not far, just to a spot only he knew, a rooftop, a quiet corner, somewhere the words couldn't follow. He didn't come back for months. Something changes in a person when they're hurt too young, too often. Slowly, so slowly he didn't even notice it happening, the boy began to lose his understanding of emotions. Not because he chose to, because he forgot how they worked. Joy, anger, sadness. They became foreign languages he used to speak fluently. At school, it got worse. Students mocked him. Even teachers looked the other way. And here's the part that hurts the most. He stopped fighting back. Not because he was weak, but because somewhere along the way he convinced himself this was just normal. This was just his life. So he let them. He lost his maturity before he ever got the chance to grow into it. He lost the glow in his eyes. He forgot how to cry. He forgot how to smile. His body simply went numb, a shell walking through hallways, invisible even when everyone was staring at him. Then came the day his father, the same man who once used to call this house a family, kicked him out completely. No warning, no explanation, just gone. The call came late that night. No details, no explanation, just a mother's instinct telling her something was wrong. Georgia didn't hesitate. She grabbed her keys and drove straight there, her mind racing faster than the car. When she pulled up, she saw him, standing alone under a streetlight, a single bag at his feet, exactly as she feared. Neither of them said much. There wasn't much to say. She simply opened the door and he got in. The drive was quiet, almost too quiet. Jack stared out the window, watching the streetlights blur past, while Georgia kept glancing at him, searching for something, anything that might tell her how badly he was hurting. She wanted to ask. She wanted to reach across the space between them and pull him into a hug. But some silences aren't meant to be broken too soon. So she just drove. And for the first time in years, Jax wasn't running to an empty rooftop. He was going somewhere that maybe, just maybe, could learn to feel like home again. That night in his mother's quiet home, Jack stood in front of a mirror and made a decision no one asked him to make. He picked up a pair of scissors, and piece by piece, he changed the way he looked, as if becoming someone else might make the pain belong to someone else too. He didn't cry while he did it. He didn't feel anything while he did it. From that night on, Jack stopped speaking more than he had to. Silence became easier than words. And in silence, he began to disappear. 5 years passed. Jax, the boy who once forgot how to feel, didn't disappear completely. He just rebuilt himself into someone quieter, sharper, harder to read. He went to college, sat in the back row, spoke only when spoken to, studied like silence itself was a subject he was mastering. He took a part-time job to survive on his own, because depending on anyone again wasn't a risk Jax was willing to take. And somewhere in all that silence, he found two things that didn't ask him to speak: music and drawing. His hands learned what his voice never could. A guitar became the sound of everything he never said out loud. A sketchbook became the diary he still couldn't finish writing. People started to notice Jax, not for his emotions, because he still didn't show many, but for his talent, for the quiet, careful way he poured himself into every note, every line, every page. But it wasn't just his talent people noticed. Somewhere between the silence and the guitar strings, something else had changed. Something Jax himself never noticed. He had changed outside, too. The boy who used to shrink into hallways now walked through them without even trying, and people looked. Girls at the cafe where he worked found reasons to order slowly, just to watch his hands move. Girls on campus whispered when he passed, wondering why the quiet one in the back row never looked up. Even strangers on the street would glance twice, then a third time, unable to place why a boy who barely spoke could hold a room without saying a word. But Jax never noticed any of it. Not the stares, not the whispers. Not the girl who dropped her books just to have a reason to talk to him and left disappointed when he simply picked them up, handed them back, and walked away without a second glance. He wasn't ignoring them. He genuinely didn't see it. His world had shrunk down to routine. Wake up, work, class, guitar, sketchbook, sleep. Attention was something he'd stopped expecting a long time ago, so he'd also stopped looking for it. He had become good, maybe even great. But greatness was never what he was chasing. He was just trying to survive his own silence, one skill at a time. He had become someone worth noticing. He just never learned how to notice himself. We're about to meet the one person who's going to change everything. But first, subscribe now because the next part is where this story truly begins. In the middle of all this darkness, there was one girl. Cheerful, playful, the complete opposite of everything he had become. The first time he saw her, he stepped back instinctively. "I've already lost everything," he told himself. But she noticed him. She saw a boy who sat alone reading books, who never opened his mouth to speak to anyone, and instead of walking past him like everyone else did, she got curious. So she made her move. A simple accident. She bumped into him and let herself fall.
"I'm sorry. It was my fault."
That all she needed. She caught him in conversation and didn't let go, talking to him for the entire day, laughing, asking questions, refusing to let the silence win. By the end of it, she'd tricked him into exchanging contact information with her. For the boy, everything about this felt new enough to make him happy for a moment. But then the old thought crept back in. This isn't my life. My life is silence. And just like that, he shut down again. Comment, she's different, if you can already tell this girl isn't giving up on him. But she didn't give up. One day she shared her own cheerful memories, her own past with him, openly, freely, like it cost her nothing. And something in him cracked. Tears started falling from his eyes, but his face showed nothing. No expression, no reaction. Just tears falling from a face that had forgotten how to feel anything at all. That's the moment she realized. Something is deeply wrong with this boy. So she went to his house. She asked his mother directly what happened to him. His mother refused to say a single word. Determined, she asked around his neighborhood, his old classmates, anyone who might know. But every single person reacted the same way. A flash of disgust, of judgment, the moment they heard his father's name. She didn't have the full story yet, but she knew enough to understand. This wasn't just a quiet boy. One evening, she followed him. She watched him walk to his usual spot, the same rooftop corner he'd run to as a child. She watched him cry, silently, for a few minutes. Then she watched him open an old diary and begin to write. When he finished, he hugged that diary to his chest and closed his eyes, just breathing for a while before heading home. That night, she made a decision that would change everything. She went to his house and told his mother a small lie, that she was his friend. His mother, relieved that her son finally had someone, happily let her into his room. She searched. She found the diary, and she read every single page, every memory, every wound, every dream he had never spoken out loud to another living soul. She cried reading it. Then she went straight to his usual spot. He wasn't there yet, so she waited. When he finally arrived and saw her sitting there with his diary in her hands, he understood immediately.
"Now you know who I am."
But she ran after him. She wrapped her arms around him from behind, a hug he never asked for, never expected, and maybe never believed he deserved.
"I will always be here for you."
And then, he wakes up. It was a dream. All of it. He wakes up and instead of despair, he walks back to his usual spot, diary in hand, and for the first time, he opens it with a smile. He begins writing about the dream he just had. Then he feels it, that unmistakable sense of being watched. He turns around. She's there for just a moment, and then she disappears in front of his eyes. He can't even remember her face anymore. But the emotions she gave him, those stay. With tears still falling, he writes his final line. Maybe she was never real. Maybe she was the emotion he locked away for years, finally finding a way back to him. Either way, he remembered how to feel again. And sometimes, that's enough. If this story moved you, hit subscribe. We post a new emotional story like this every week. And comment below, do you think she was real or just a piece of himself he finally found? Thank you for watching until the very end.